The brutal murder of Natalie McNally in December 2022 stunned everyone here in Lurgan. 32 and 15 weeks pregnant, Natalie was found strangled, stabbed and beaten to death in her own home. This was a murder that shocked Northern Ireland and sparked a massive police investigation to catch her killer. In March this year, Stephen McCullough, Natalie's boyfriend and the father of her unborn baby boy, was unanimously found guilty. He pretended to be the grieving partner and thought he had got away with it. But we spoke to Natalie's parents days after the man they welcomed into their home was convicted of their daughter's murder.
It was the whole heart and soul of our family, you know. We loved her so very, very much. From the very first day she was born, unfortunately the day she died, she was loved so much and still is.
Natalie McNally's killer sat in this very house knowing all along what he had done.
So evil, he's so
manipulative and cold.
Stephen McCullough, Natalie's boyfriend and the father of her unborn child, was found guilty of her murder.
You know, seeing him when brought into court every day and sitting within maybe 2 or 3 yards of him was really, really hard, and it was the most difficult time of our lives. It really was horrendous, you know.
How dangerous is Stephen McCullough?
Oh, I think he's very dangerous. I don't think he should ever be released, and he should never be in society.
He's a very, very dangerous person, you know, and what he done, the way he planned Natalie's murder, and the way he tried to cover it up, even come into this house here to talk to us, you know, he's just so devious, you know, how he could do it, you know. And he should get a full life sentence and should never be allowed back on the street again, you know, and I would put a good message out for this country.
Days after the murder in December 2022, McCullough was initially ruled out as a suspect because of his alibi, the YouTube live stream that wasn't live at all. You welcomed him in to your home after Natalie's murder. You treated him with respect and a grieving partner. How distressing is that for you now, knowing he was here?
So we welcomed him in, and I know the boys are, I know, you know, because they sort of took them under and they were worrying and, you know, about him, and I know Declan brought him to Natalie's grave, and I know that haunts Declan.
Letting him come in and, you know, giving him time in the room with Natalie's coffin, for about 20 minutes, is really, that guts us now, you know, to know that we done that. But it wasn't our fault, it was his fault. It was him that done it on us, you know, and we'll never forgive him for it. When you look back, he was using us, you know, for his cover-up too, you know, that was...
And what do you think about him now that you know he has been found guilty of her murder, and it was a brutal murder?
I hate him, and I'll hate him to the day I die, and I don't care who says it or what, you know, forgive and forget. Never, I'll hate him to my last breath. I hate him to death.
No, well, I'm different from Noel. I don't hate him. I have no feelings for him. I don't. Why should I? It's evil. Why should I let evil win?
How haunting is it to think that we're sitting here talking about Natalie and there's a funeral of Amy Doherty happening?
It's terrible.
Oh yeah, every time there's another young lady's been murdered, it brings it back to the day the police come to this house to tell us that Natalie had been killed. You know, it's just brings it all back, flooding back all the time. And it's been very hard. We can't even grieve for our grandchild yet, you know, because you know, it's so difficult. He would have been the most loved child ever, you know. Brenda had bought a few wee things, didn't tell me about it, but she'd already bought a few wee things for the child, and then unfortunately we had to put them into Natalie's coffin when she'd been buried, you know. We're just going to get on with our lives and grieve properly for Natalie and Dean.
Stephen McCullough meticulously planned the murder of Natalie McNally, filming himself playing a computer game to be broadcast on the night of the killing, pretending it was live, all parts of his fake alibi. He then got on a bus from Lisburn to Lurgan, walked the streets of this town to Natalie's home here in Silverwood Green. Well, Sarah Clark looks back at how McCullagh went from being a boyfriend and father-to-be to a cold and callous killer.
It was a brutal murder that stunned Northern Ireland. Natalie McNally was 15 weeks pregnant when she was strangled, stabbed and beaten to death in her Silverwood Green home in Lurgan sometime between 8:50 and 9:30 p.m. on Sunday the 18th of December 2022. Natalie, who was 32, met her killer Stephen McCullagh on Bumble, an online dating site, in August 2022. The relationship developed. In October, Natalie became pregnant, McCullagh the father. Just over a month later, Natalie was dead. The YouTuber, who worked part-time at the Belfast Telegraph, had planned the whole thing after finding sexually explicit messages on her phone she'd sent to and received from other men. McCullagh was arrested at the scene by police on the 19th of December on suspicion of murder. He claimed to have found her body after she wouldn't reply to his texts because she said she was annoyed with him for drinking. That was a lie. He said he knew who did it, Natalie's ex-boyfriend. Another lie. He told police he was live streaming at the time of the attack.
I just realised I'm literally going to be drinking and driving.
Another lie.
In the game, by the way, I'm not leaving the house tonight. So.
The 36-year-old was initially ruled out as a suspect because he had what appeared to be an alibi.
That's what would happen in the real world. Absolutely.
He was welcomed into Natalie's family home. They left him alone with her coffin during the wake out of kindness, unaware he'd killed her. McCullagh did not attend her funeral. In the days after her death, vigils were held all over Northern Ireland in Natalie's memory, like this one in Lurgan in January 2023. McCullagh was right there in the background all along, knowing what he'd done. He created a video tribute to Natalie, which moved the family to tears. Only days later, he was arrested again. Police had discovered the live stream wasn't live at all. Stephen McCullagh had recorded it 4 days before the killing, the false alibi he'd peddled to get away with murder. On Sunday, the 18th of December, Natalie was watching the World Cup final with her parents. Stephen McCullagh messaged her just before 6 p.m. That would be the last message Natalie would ever send him. The YouTube killer uploaded his fake live stream, left his house, got a bus from Dunmurry to Lurgan, walked calmly through the town to Natalie's house. Her neighbours said they could hear screaming. At the time, police released these CCTV images of who they believed was Natalie's murderer. We now know the figure in the picture is Stephen McCullagh. Then came the act and the cover-up.
I'll bet no one has ever live streamed this game as worse as I have.
He deleted the stream from his computer. He started messaging Natalie knowing she was dead. Stephen McCullagh's web of lies eventually caught up with him. This was a planned, calculated and premeditated murder, one that McCullagh tried and nearly got away with, but in the end, he didn't.
Yes, this has been a very difficult and, of course, long 3 years for Natalie's family. As you can imagine, inside court, it was emotional. There were tears. We were all told how Natalie was fun, loving and caring, and her murder has left a giant empty space that will never be filled. The judge said that McCullagh did not just kill Natalie, he knew her unborn baby boy would never survive the attack. Well, he's been handed one of the longest sentences in Northern Ireland, and this is why.
Is the patient breathing?
No! She's cold!
Okay.
No, there's blood everywhere.
Listen to me, I'm organising.
This is all an act. The voice of a killer. Stephen McCullagh pretending to be distraught on the 999 call. All part of his calculated plan to try and get away with murder, but he didn't.
Stephen, you're under arrest for murder. You do not have to say anything, but I must caution you that if you do not mention with questions...
The 36-year-old, who was treated like a grieving partner by Natalie McNally's family, was sentenced to 31 years for what the judge described as a brutal and frenzied attack.
We do not celebrate the sentence handed down as Bernard. My 3 boys and myself are serving a life sentence since the murder of our beloved Natalie. But hopefully it will serve to deter and to help stop violence against women and girls in this country.
Natalie was 15 weeks pregnant with McCullagh's unborn baby boy when she was strangled, stabbed and beaten to death by him in her Lurgan home in December 2022. McCullagh tried to frame Natalie's ex-boyfriend and fool everyone. The judge told the court his behaviour towards the McNally family showed his absolute determination to cover his tracks, presenting himself as devastated, distraught and shocked.
The judge said, "Mr. McCullough, please stand. This was a senseless and brutal murder. This murder was planned with remorseless detail. You attacked someone you profess to love in a frenzied assault, characterised by excessive and gratuitous violence. This killing was cold-blooded and calculated." As the judge sentenced McCullough to 31 years, he stood in the dock and simply nodded.
Hey, and we're live. Hello, everyone.
The 5-week trial heard how McCullagh of Woodland Gardens in Lisburn pre-recorded a YouTube video days before the murder and broadcast it on the 18th of December, the night Natalie was attacked, pretending it was live. The fake alibi that he nearly got away with. But this is the moment he was caught out on his lie.
Now your device has been examined. Okay, it was seized and it was examined. And there is nothing to suggest that you were on that device between 6 o'clock and midnight on the 18th of December.
Police released material never seen before in public. This is McCullagh getting on a bus in Lisburn, hood up and face covered. He then gets off in Lurgan. Watch him here calmly walk away moments after murdering Natalie. And then, in a disguise, he gets into a taxi home. McCullagh has never admitted what he did, but weeks ago we heard how he told probation he doesn't remember, but if he did do it, he is a monster. This is one of the longest sentences to be handed down in Northern Ireland. McCullagh will have to spend 31 years in prison before he's even eligible to be considered for release.
Anne McCullough was Stephen McCullough's best friend for over a decade and a star witness for the prosecution. He tried to rope her into his twisted conspiracy and asked her to come along to the murder scene with him. But she didn't. Anne was betrayed by her best friends. In a brave interview, she sat down with UTV to tell her side of the story and described how loving Natalie was to her.
There were times when he was the biggest personality in the room. He was boisterous, he was loud, he was jolly. And there was other times he sucked up all the air in the room. He was angry.
I am now going to fast forward to the night of the phone call, okay? So just deep breaths. And tell me about that phone call you received from Stephen McCullough moments after he found Natalie's body and he was in the police car.
He phoned me, he was crying, he was screaming, he was howling that she's gone, she's gone. He was so upset and incoherent at times. He was like, I couldn't get him to calm down.
Stephen McCullough wanted to bring you with him on the night he found Natalie. How distressing is it to think that your friend would put you in that scenario?
It's very distressing. I relive that moment quite a lot. My gut instinct said don't go, and I'm very glad I listened to that, because I'm very fortunate in that I get to remember Natalie as I knew her and not the horrible position that she was left in. I've suffered from nightmares ever since. I've suffered from flashbacks. If I see somebody who resembles him on the bus, I immediately have a panic and sometimes have to just get off the bus. He is not my friend. I think he is a very manipulative, very cold and calculated person. I believe now it was all an act. I believe it was all to pull at heartstrings.
Your heart?
Yeah.
He was with you days before the murder telling you that he was going to live stream, is that right?
Yeah. I can't wrap my head around any fathomable reason why he would lie. He created a situation where this played like an alibi, an astounding amount of lies to put together in advance. Once I saw that he had been rearrested and that he had given that statement that the live stream was pre-recorded, that cemented in my mind that he has done this.
You did this for Natalie?
Yes. She was just such a wonderfully kind person. Like, she would have made a great mom. I was making baby hats, I was planning to make baby blankets, you know, I was getting wee bits and pieces ready. This child was gonna be another member of my family.
This was a complex investigation for police as Stephen McCullagh tried to fool everyone with his elaborate plan. From the 6-hour YouTube video to texting Natalie the day after the killing, pretending to be worried about her, when all along he knew what he had done. Now, days after Natalie's death, McCullagh was desuspected, essentially free to go. That allowed him to play the role of the grieving partner, even having time alone with Natalie's coffin during the wake. But we spoke to the man in charge of the murder investigation. Detective Chief Inspector Neil McGuinness told me McCullagh is a danger to all women.
Stephen McCullough's outward image was very different from who he really was. So Stephen McCullagh is shown himself to be a cruel, calculating, manipulative individual who was pretending to be one of us, pretending to be a normal, loving partner, pretending to be someone online with, you know, sort of toy reviews and things like that. But in reality, he's proven himself to be a callous, heartless individual who is willing to not only murder a vulnerable woman and her unborn baby, but also to take advantage of the good nature of her family and to deny responsibility for 3.5 years. That's who Stephen McCullagh is.
And describe what he was like to interact with throughout this investigation.
Stephen McCullagh didn't really interact at all with the investigation right from the first moment. In fact, the only real interaction that he had with police right from the first attendance of police was to try to implicate someone else in the murder. And those were the only comments that he made to us throughout a series of interviews. On his initial arrest, Stephen McCullagh refused to give us any detail of what he saw in the crime scene. And it wasn't lost on us that he was the only person who had seen the crime scene and seen Natalie in the position she was in before paramedics and police had attempted to give her assistance. So that was vital information for us, and he refused and declined to do that. Stephen McCullagh refused to answer any questions in custody apart from where he could implicate someone else in the murder and to try to justify and to try to maintain his ruse that the live stream on the 18th of December was real.
How dangerous is he?
I would say Stephen McCullagh is an extremely dangerous individual. He presents a real danger to any woman or children around him. And I base that not only on the behaviour that I've seen and the brutality of the attack on Natalie, but also the callous way in which he tried to manipulate everyone around him, including people who had tried to stand by him, including Natalie's family, in order to sort of play the victim role himself. So the calculating nature and the pre-planning nature, to plan to murder your partner, but spend the day with her. And we have CCTV footage of him waving her off from his house on the morning he knew he was going to murder her, and he's waving her off. And that callousness, I think, really betrays how dangerous an individual he is.
Is it fair to say, though, McCullagh came very close to getting away with murder because of this fake YouTube video he used as his alibi?
There were a number of elements. So Stephen McCullagh planned this murder at least a week, potentially more than a week before it happened. So he had time and he took great pains to plan every element, or so he thought. He made a few mistakes, but he used that time to meticulously plan And all of those elements, including changing his appearance and changing his clothing, walking into Silverwood Green to walking away from it, by varying the routes and by taking buses, intending to take trains, by destroying clothing and weapons. So all of those things really could easily have led to him evading justice for this murder.
And does that worry you? Does that scare you that potentially this calculated killer could have got away with it?
It's always a concern. It's a concern for everyone in Northern Ireland, but we rely on our processes, we rely on our experiences, and my team are excellent at what we do. And I knew that given time and with meticulous work that we could bring the offender to justice.
Who made the decision to rule him out as a suspect so quickly, though?
I made the decision to desuspect Stephen McCullagh initially. The information that I had at hand at that time don't have the benefit of all the information we have at hand now. We don't have any hindsight, but to apply the investigative mindset is really important. So I go where the evidence takes me. We gather the evidence. So there is a lot of lines of inquiry at the early stage of an investigation. And I think it's worth noting as well that an arrest is an early stage part of the process, and it's designed so we can gather evidence by questioning someone. It is not an end stage. The inquiries were still going to go on, and indeed still did go on. And the elaborate ruse that Stephen McCullagh had used and some of the factors within the circumstances sort of pointed away from him at that point. However, what I would say is that the work still went on to test his account, to test every single thing that apparently was in place. And I do regret the fact that what that allowed Stephen McCullagh to do was to cruelly manipulate the goodwill and the generosity of spirit of the McNally family.
Well, I was going to ask you that, are you sorry to the family and do you have regrets? Because he was able to worm his way in, and we all now know he was given time alone with her coffin, which quite frankly is sick.
Yeah, Stephen McCullagh is the person responsible for that behaviour. I have explained my rationale to the family, so the family are well aware of why I took the decision that I took, and the reason for that. I've told them that I regret the pain that has caused, and that will always live with me as an individual. However, I think the family accept, the rationale that I had at the time. They know the twists and turns that this investigation took for 3.5 years, but they also know that Stephen McCullagh was the person who chose to not only betray Natalie and her baby, but also to betray their trust. In the time of your career, were you shocked by the level of violence that Natalie was subjected to? Natalie McNally was subjected to a horrific attack. It was sustained, and anyone who followed the trial will have heard the pathologist taking time to outline the injuries that Natalie suffered. It's always shocking, it's always chilling to see that firsthand and to have to experience that. And that does take its toll on the first responding police officers and the paramedics. I was shocked at that level of violence, but sadly I've seen it in other cases as well. And people can do horrific things to other people. And we know what the violence against women and girls are in Northern Ireland and what the statistics are. So yes, horrific, shocking, but it gives me more resolve to do the job that I promised to do. So when I meet the families in these cases, and with the McNally family, I promised them that I would follow the evidence and that I would do everything that we could to pursue justice for them. Just describe that moment the guilty verdict came in for you. I think in my position, and I sat through every minute of the court case, every minute of the trial for 5 weeks. The moment the jury foreman gave the verdict, my heart was in my mouth. The biggest sense that I had was relief, because I had promised the McNally family that we would deliver justice for Natalie. I had made my own personal commitment that I would try to speak for Natalie and the baby. And it was so crucial that while I believe the case was very strong and I believe that the jury would have been persuaded, I was still really nervous, partly because I could not face the consequences of Stephen McCullagh being released into the community again, and with the risk that I believe he poses to women. So I was frightened, and it was relief after all the 3.5 years of hard work. You could see it. Yeah, it was some moment. I was delighted for the McNally family, but it's always tinged with sadness because Natalie and her baby deserved to be here. And
I think in that moment everyone did freeze in court. Have you ever seen anything like that before?
I've never experienced, I have 29 years in the police service and I've never experienced a moment like that. But I think that is in part due to the strength and the togetherness of the McNally family and how they have faced this whole entire process. And it's a gruelling process to go through a prosecution and a trial, and how they have faced that with resilience and with care and with love. I think it was a real testament to them, but I have never seen anything of that nature before.
And what impacts does a case like this have on you personally?
It's at the time of the investigation, it is extremely sort of stressful. You know, there are moments where there are doubts, and you just have to stick to the task and you have to fulfill the promise that you made. There is exhaustion from myself and the team in the early stages of this case. So for the first 6 weeks, this was a gruelling marathon, really.
Are women now safer because Stephen McCullagh is behind bars?
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly.
During the 5-week trial, the prosecution picked apart Stephen McCullough's murder plan. Of course, there was that false alibi with that fake YouTube video, to piecing together a mountain of CCTV footage and then their star witnesses. There was pressure to secure a conviction, and when the guilty verdict came, it was clear it meant everything.
This case was unprecedented, really, in the level of premeditation, planning. So there were a number of really unusual aspects. Probably the most unusual is the use of a YouTube video as an alibi in the case.
Did you watch it yourself?
I have watched it, yeah. It's
what are your thoughts?
Very chilling. It's sinister because you realise now that it was made for the purpose of covering up this murder. It's a brutal domestic murder of a young woman who was vibrant, who was lively, loved by many, many people, her family, colleagues, everybody. And she had so much to live for. She was so excited about her wee baby coming, and that was all taken away in the most brutal, unjustified way.
Have you ever come across a killer like McCullagh before?
No, I haven't seen a case like this in 27 years as a lawyer. The level of premeditation, the level of planning and cover-up, and especially the horrible aspect of this where he ingratiated himself with the family and spied on them. We've never seen anything like that. McCullagh believed he was cleverer than the authorities, that he could outwit the police, and that he could get off with this.
Do you feel this case is one of its kind in Northern Ireland?
Yes, and I hope we will never see another case like this.
How critical was the work of the cybercrime units in looking into that YouTube video, because Stephen McCullagh nearly got away with this?
The work of the cybercrime unit was absolutely critical, and the guys up there are amazing. They worked meticulously on this case, but there was a lot of other evidence as well. The demolition of his alibi was not the only evidence in the case. When we talk about a circumstantial case, sometimes people think that's a weaker case, but it's not at all. A circumstantial case can be extremely strong. It's about bringing lots of strands of evidence together to complete a picture for the jury. And in this case, there were hours and hours of CCTV that had been examined, and police had distilled that down to show the journey of the murderer to Natalie's home and then back directly to McCullough's home. And that was very important evidence too. And also the witness evidence from very courageous witnesses who knew that they would be put under pressure through cross-examination, and they still were very keen to assist the prosecution, and their evidence was really critical in the case as well.
The trial was around 5 weeks. I was in court. It was very emotional when that guilty verdict came. For you personally and for the prosecution team, what did this conviction mean?
We were determined to get justice for Natalie. We felt we had a very strong case and that, you know, the framing of the ex-partner was a complete sideshow, really. All of the evidence pointed to McCullagh as being the murderer. And when the conviction came, the outpouring of emotion was entirely understandable. The family had been under huge pressure for 3 years. This was a really, really brutal murder of a beloved girl with a huge supportive family, and everybody in the court felt the emotion at the end.
Are you shocked by the volume of cases involving violence against women and young girls coming through the court system here?
Yes, it is shocking and it's shameful as well. This was a really important conviction to get because of the high-profile nature of the case and the level of violence used. I mean, the pathologist took 40 minutes to go through the injuries that Natalie sustained. So this was an extreme example and yes, unprecedented in various ways, but violence against women and girls is very common. We're determined to do what we can, but we are only one part of the solution. We are now prosecuting these cases in all their complexity as robustly as we can where the evidence allows us to do so.
What really does this mean for the Public Prosecution Service to know McCullagh will spend a very long time behind bars?
Well, we're very pleased with the conviction, to say the least. It was a lot of pressure for everybody, but most of all for Natalie's loving family. They should have Natalie with them now and her little boy, who would be a little toddler now, and McCullagh has to answer for that. And, you know, we held him to account, and I'm very pleased.
Stephen McCullagh has been handed one of the longest sentences in Northern Ireland. At the very least, he will have to serve 31 years in prison before he's even eligible to be considered for release. The judge described the killing of Natalie McNally as cold-blooded and calculated. He said McCullagh did not just kill Natalie. He knew the unborn baby would have no chance of surviving the murderous assault. This has been a long and difficult 3 years for Natalie's family. And they say, while McCullagh has been given 31 years, we've been given a life sentence.